Well, good morning. Welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Aged Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey.
So, according to the International Education Database, which evaluates and reports the progress of education goals globally, the United States is ranked 26th. We hear stories about the education gap, teacher dissatisfaction, overcrowded classrooms, concern about the effects and effectiveness of state testing, and we wonder if our public education system is failing our children. So today, we will discuss the state of our public education and take a look at what's working in other countries, what's working in our country, and find out how our education system works. So, Dave, you were a teacher for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and so you really have a unique perspective from an insider's point of view about our education system that most of us parents don't have. I have a little bit of one because I started the foundation a couple of years ago, so I've seen some things, but I really think that teachers and administrators take a lot of heat from parents because we really don't have an understanding of what's actually going on in the classroom.
Right. Yeah, so I've been in schools where I've had little to no resources. My very first school, I had one ream of paper for the entire semester,
To teach how many children?
125 kids a day. And they said, welcome to the job. Here you go." And so I had challenges there, and I've taught at schools where I had unlimited resources. I had Office Depot trucks coming every single Friday, where I had a personal budget just to get stuff above and beyond what the school already bought for me, and it made a big difference. I've dealt with mental illness. I've dealt with ADD, ADHD, dealt with parents where there wasn't much support at all. And I've had parents who had a little too much support.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to teach to different learning styles and learning how to adjust and learning how classroom management and different issues there. It's a lot. And then on top of all that, just teaching the content. To be honest, for me, the content was probably the easiest part of the day. Just teaching the math that wasn't the hard part. It was all the other challenges that we had to face. Parents who would, circumvent me if they had an issue with me and go straight to the principal. And there's a lot of issues and challenges that teachers face as well. But there are a lot of challenges on the home front. So many different things that are happening, and hence why we started this show to help support that. So I'm looking forward to diving into this topic today.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of discussion with several friends that are parents and, with you, and had some heated conversations about some topics regarding education. And it's not an easy fix. We think we know what some of the issues are, but it's not necessarily black and white. And it's I believe, not an issue that's just one step in front of us, like it just in the classroom. It's really
Right.
more of a systemic issue. There are systemic issues that need to be dealt with, and things that administrators and teachers really, they have their hands tied in some
Right.
things. So we're going to discuss a lot of that. I'm really excited about this episode because I really I care about what's happening, and we just need to start the discussion. And I think parents need to. I talked to one mom, and she said she's kind of given up, and that makes me sad. And she's a proponent, she's a strong advocate of education, but she's just kind of like, I just don't even know what to do anymore. So I think it's good to get the conversation going and see how we as parents can be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And just a lot of things that we can do maybe. So before we go any further, we want to say, as we do every week, it does take a village. So if you hear a great parenting tip or nugget of advice, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag School Days Show and hashtag I Am School Days. And also, we really want you guys to be a part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments about our topic today, give us a call at 214-431-5062. So Dave, who do we have with us today?
Okay, so today we have Andrea Fields. She's a native of the state of Louisiana and is employed by the Duncanville Independent School District. where she currently serves as the Assistant Superintendent of Operations. Ms. Fields holds a Bachelor's of Science degree from Louisiana Tech University and a Master's in Educational Leadership from Stephen F. Austin State University. This year marks her 40th year of service to public education. I was 5 when you got started. Put it in perspective. She was employed with the Longview Independent School District, where she served as the Deputy Superintendent. She also she's a current member of the Texas Association of School Administrators and was blessed to be awarded a lifetime membership in the Parent Teachers Association. She is also a Golden Life member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and has been an active member for 42 years.
Golden Life member. All right.
Ms. Fields is married to the Reverend Albert Fields and is the mother of 7 adult children and 7 darling granddaughters, and she is an active member of the Antioch Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas.
All right.
Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad that you're here. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So we are ranked the wealthiest and most powerful country in the world, yet our education system is not even ranked in the top 20. So what, in your opinions, are some of the reasons why we're not ranked higher? Well, first, that's a big question. We could probably do a whole show on just that, right?
We could indeed. But first, I want to say this. I am not an expert in anything, but I do have many years of experience of being in public education, and first of all, just have a great passion for what I do. I would not have continued to do this for 40 years of my life without really believing in public education and education in general for our students here in our country. Yes, Danita, we are one of the wealthiest and most powerful nations on the planet, yet there are, as the statistics show, we're not ranked very high when it comes to education. And so you asked my opinion, and so that's what I'm going to share with you today. Of course, as you said, we could talk about this all day long because there are varying opinions about why we're where we are. I think you said ranked 27th. Of course, when you look at the landscape of our nation and the educational system as it stands today, when we look back over the last 50 years, a lot of things have happened in regard to public education, yet the change has been very slow. When you think about what's happening in our world in general, with our information systems and how we connect to other people from other countries, when you really think about other institutions, public schools are very slow to change. It seems like we're always bringing up the rear. And so what I would say about why we're where we are is that there are so many things to dissect. First of all, the perception of what's happening in public education. When you really poll people, if you ask them how their school is doing, how their neighborhood school or the school where their children go to school, they will say our school is fine. We've got a good school. We've seen this research bore out for many, many years. But when you think about the system in general, they think the schools and perception is schools are failing, that their public schools are substandard. Hence the movement for school choice, other schools that have opened up. And so when you really think about the public's perception, that's one thing. Secondly, making it a priority for our country and our nation. In our past, if you look back, getting a good quality education was one of the things that really was on conversations at the dinner table. People always ask you when you went to the family reunion, what you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to be? What are you going to study? Are you going to college? Or the expectation was that you were going to college. And so with that, many times the really the importance of getting a quality education has been minimized somewhat. And then, of course, I think as David talked about in his opening comments, putting the resources where they need to be. Our resources many times are stretched when we start talking about funding for schools, whether it's a public school or other schools. And I know there's a lot of controversy over public school dollars going to private and charter and schools of choice. And no matter what side of the aisle you're on in that argument, our students need the money. And
Right.
so resources are critical. And when I say resources, that means paying the people who do the work.
Well,
Includes the teachers because they are the ones. And then also making sure the facilities are conducive to learning, because anyone knows if something is nice and pleasant and clean and engaging, learning is more apt to take place versus it's dirty, it's run down, it's raining inside, etc. It's hot, there's no air conditioning, the teachers don't have the resources that they need. And so there are a lot of those kinds of things. But I think the expectations, and then I look at, and I've talked about this, of people who've had bad experiences with schools sometimes bring that with them. And so they come to us with probably a problem because they don't trust us. And so in turn, the kind of education that a child could receive is kind of buffered by that, because everybody went to school, so a lot of times they're expert in what happens in school. But there's a lot more, a lot of moving parts. And so I would just say that there are, one, the perception, the expectations that we have, and, I really feel very strongly that our schools are doing better than just what the test always reveal. We're in a high stakes testing state, Texas is, and so and that came about because of the business owners who were receiving high school and college graduates who could not do the math, do the work, didn't know how to get along in collective groups that they had to work in, and so they asked for higher standards. So the business community at large, and I'm not just talking about any one particular, they wanted young people who were work ready, whether they were coming out of high school, whether they were coming out of college. And so the standards were raised. I've been in this business a long time, and I remember when minimum standards were the things that we were talking about, and now we're looking at
For work readiness?
For work readiness, yes. The
Minimum
business owners in this state lobbied to say, we want we want kids who can do math, higher order thinking. We want students who can use, do algebra and be able to convert that to be in the work environment, and be able to communicate and work in teams, write, written communication, and verbal. And so the expectations for us have been going up each year. And so not that that's a bad thing, because I think overall we've, especially in this state, we've really tried to meet the goals that they've set for us. So.
That's awesome that we responded well to that, and that the business community thought to come to the schools and say, they're coming to us ill prepared, and you guys have to do something about that.
That would be correct.
That's awesome. So there's been a lot of outcry about a need for education reform, as we've talked about. So what do you think are some of the most significant positive changes in our education system that have happened in the last 30 years?
Well, there have been a lot of positive changes that have happened in our education community at large. I think one particular thing is the fact that in public school in particular, our schools are more adapt to working with students who are second language learners. Here in the state of Texas, of course, with the 5.23, depending on who you ask on any given day, a million school children. A lot of those students, and the majority of them, over half now, are students of bilingual and Latino descent. And so the students come to us many times knowing their native language and coming to the school not knowing English. So we've spent a lot of time working, a lot of resources, a lot of training for teachers, putting in place programs for our second language learners. I think overall the school are a lot more in tuned with, and you're going to hear a lot more about this probably as we talk a little further today about social emotional learning.
Yes.
We're getting there. Of course, as a result of many heinous violence acts that have happened across not only our state but across the nation, that a lot more emphasis is being placed on that, and those are some positive changes that are happening. People probably think that the accountability system is a bad thing, but I think for those of us who have been in this business, we've always been accountable. It's just what the measuring stick has been.
Yeah.
And so that's the system that we're under, and we're operating under it and trying to meet the challenges. It is very rigorous. It is very challenging. It is not like it was back when I was in school in the 60s and the 70s. The kind of rigor of the curriculum is higher, and that's good because we're competing not against just children here in the state of, or adults in the state of Texas or in this nation. We're competing globally for
Right.
positions, for jobs that haven't even been created yet. And so
Right.
we're trying to prepare our students for those to be able to think, to process, to be able to communicate, to be able to collaborate, which is a big thing
Right.
in schools today, that we're really teaching students how to work together. As you look across this nation, there are a lot of the Fortune 500 companies and a lot of the companies where people want to be employed, and we can name some of those without naming them on radio right now. But they talk about the collaboration piece, being able to communicate, being able to work together well, because most of the time it's some project you're working on. And so you can bring all the content head knowledge, but you still have to have those other skills. And so schools are doing a lot more with soft skills, a lot more with being able to work together, the work ethics that we have to have in order to be able to grow and to plan and to work together.
So critics of the state testing would say that the strong emphasis on state testing is causing us to not be able to focus as much on what it is that you just talked about, the soft skills and the work readiness and stuff. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, again, I'm going to say that people in this business always, accountability is a big thing. We want results. And so I don't think any of us are shying away from it. I think we are really wanting to be able to have a little bit more say in the whole child. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Right.
That is the only measuring stick. You all know that our schools now are graded, and we have an A through F system. Not only will the school district be graded this year, but our actual campuses will be graded. And so a lot of folks are a little anxious about that because you're really not comparing apples to apples when you think about it, because as you all know, our schools all look very different.
Right.
It depends on where you are, what part of the country, what part of the state you're in. Our schools look different because of the student makeup and the resources they have, how the schools are funded. And so the accountability system is just that. We are operating under it. But I think for us, those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child, whether it's working with soft skills, good decision making, all the things that really make up. What about the art, the music, the
Right.
theater? Because there are many students who perhaps struggle with the academic subjects but excel
Yeah.
in music and art, and they're very gifted with their hands, or they can really very creative. And so we're really trying to put together a program for the whole child, and that starts even from our young age. It is more challenging because many times teachers feel compelled because of that's held over their heads. We've
The
got to
state
pass,
testing.
the students have to
Right.
do well on the STAR test. And so with that comes a lot of pressure. It comes all the way down. Schools want to be rated A's and B's, and so for that's really the measuring
Right.
stick. And unfortunately for us, that's the system we operate in. But yet, I really feel like the people who really do this and do it with the real reason of why, making students' lives better, and educating the next generation of Texans, that they're up to the challenge. And so I know they think we're teaching to the test. We spend all our time with that. And unfortunately, in many instances, that is true because of just the pressure that's being put on teachers.
Yeah, I know. I mean, personally, I felt the pressure all the time, especially in mathematics.
Yes.
Math, I felt like I was in the hot seat every single year. And in some school districts, it was just the test. And I've also been in, and maybe we'll bring this up in another episode. I've taught in international baccalaureate schools, where it's very collaborative and a very integrated approach to how they do the work. So there was a lot more collaboration in that environment. I'm personally a big proponent of project-based learning. I love to do that. However, the challenges is I could project-based learn all day, teach all day long, and work all day long. But at the end of the day, what I was weighted on was those district benchmarks and how they performed on STAR. So it really is a question of how do you assess students to show the effectiveness of what you're doing. And the state of Texas has said this is the way to assess. Personally, I feel like there's other ways that you can show that students are learning, but at the end of the day, it comes back down. It doesn't matter. I could do a great project, and kids can collaborate and learn the skills and the standards.
And enjoy.
Right.
And enjoy.
Right.
Yes. My favorite classes were the ones where the teachers were doing out of the box things and allowing us to do project based learning and things like that. And not just sitting at my desk, doing a worksheet or something like that.
Right. I mean, that
makes a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, I will say there are a lot of teachers that are doing it. That are.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just here's a worksheet, solve it. Here's the strategies. However, we have to work on, I think, collectively, how can we bring more of that in while still under this system, make sure that kids are accountable to what the state says they have to learn, but also bringing those other great ways. There's so many ways to be innovative in how we work with our kids to grow. But we have to work within the system we have right now. It is what it is. But also, and we have to find other ways to get creative in how we educate our children.
You mentioned the new accountability system for schools and districts and those. I'm not sure that all of our listeners are aware that it has even changed. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And my secondary question to that is there any proponent to that includes some of the soft skills and things that we were talking about?
Well, of course, this is a fairly new. The grading system is new. Accountability is not new, obviously, because we've had the STAR test, and before STAR, we had the other iterations.
Right.
I've been around for a while. I could probably go back from TABS, which was the Texas Assessment of Basic Skills, and that was back perhaps in the 90s when we first started giving any kind of test to our students. And so with the commissioner has put in place under direction of course, State Board of Education and the legislators, a school basically rating. Last year, districts were rated, and it was A through F, just as you would get a report card, basically. And this year, campuses will be rated. Of course, I don't have all of the details in front of me to give you the ratings, but those will be probably be published in the month of August. Anyone who's specifically interested in either their district rating, they should know that already from last school year, but in August those ratings will come out along with the school ratings, and it really depends on how the students do on the STAR test. That's really the measurement, along with now we have college career and military readiness. And of course, dropout rate is also a part of the accountability system. And so those are some things that the high school is rated on, college, career, and military readiness. And so the military is even now part of that. When we look at our exiting seniors, how many students will be going to the military, how many students will be going to college, or then even career readiness, which many of our students, particularly, and I'm sure here in the Metroplex, a lot of high schools have programs where they have dual credit courses, where they partner either with a college or university, where students leave sometimes with an associate's degree because they've taken dual credit courses. And so those things the districts will be judged on, and that's kind of how our ratings will be. And of course, it is very challenging to understand all the moving parts of that. Like I said, I'm not a expert in accountability, but I know that everybody understands A, B, C, D, and F. There are no E's. Everyone understands that, and so we want, and of course, many schools this past year, the districts, a lot of districts that received a lot of the D's and the F's were many times students with a lot of diversity, a lot of minority students, a lot of poor students, economically disadvantaged students. Not to say that was all, but a lot of the students, school districts that had a lot of children of color, second language learners, economically disadvantaged students were, many of those districts were rated D and F.
Let me just add another little insight from, I came in my last year in the classroom was the first year of the A through F system. And the biggest difference that I was told is how we measure growth and success of our kids.
That's correct.
So in the past, it was what percentage of the students passed the state exam. And so what that tended to do was to put all the pressure on us to focus on the kids that were underachieving, that were either barely passing or below passing from prior year. So we taught to everyone, but we really had to ensure that students who were failing were able to pass. Now with A through F, it's accountable to every single student. So whether a student is struggling, barely passing, whether they passed last year, and whether they were doing extremely well. Now because what tended to happen was, and I hate to say this, but my kids that were high flyers, I knew they were going to be all right.
They were on their own.
Well, I worked with them,
right?
But I knew they were going to be fine. So the emphasis was always on the kids that were really, really struggling, because that's how we were rated. That's, the scores, the percentage passing rates. But now at every single level, every student has to measure growth. So if you scored an 89 last year, percentage-wise, let's say, how did you do this year? If you did an 87 this year,
you regress.
That's regressing. So you have to grow the high flyers, the kids in the middle of the pack, and the lower achievers. So in that aspect, I do like that, because that forced me to say, okay, wait a minute. Okay, my high flyers, how am I stretching them? How am I forcing them to grow more? Because that's how I'm evaluated now collectively, which I think that is better. Because I do feel that, that some students at times were being neglected, not because we weren't teaching to all students, but because the emphasis was so much on getting our struggling students to pass.
Right. That would be correct.
Yeah.
And thank you, David, for emphasizing that. And that is true. We have a little demonstration that one of the ladies in the district, she works with the accountability, and she says about moving the string. We have those students who are meet the standard, those who are really having some of the growth.
Right.
And so not only those students, a long time ago, it was like you passed or fail, your percentage pass or fail. Now for every group of students, we have to move them along the string. They have to show growth, and that is correct.
Right, special ed students, minority populations.
Correct. By every
Yeah,
subpopulation, it's judged. African Americans, second language learners, economically disadvantaged. You can dissect it all the way down. They have all of those groups that we are judged by.
Yeah.
So I wonder what impact that's having on these students who are struggling the most, now that some of the time is being taken away from, because you yourself were saying that the high flyers, you're like, okay, y'all are good, and then you focused on the very struggling students. I wonder how that's impacting them. They have less time now.
Well, I mean, for me, it wasn't that I spent per se less time, but I had to get more creative in how I was moving the stick forward with students that were already getting those core concepts. So for me, now I was the only teacher in my school that did this, but I did the concept called the flipped classroom, and what that basically means is I would create and assign pre-lessons before they would come into the classroom. They would watch a 7 to 10 minute video on a concept. Then I could quickly assess who are my students who were struggling instantly. And then I knew when they came in the next day, okay, these students did not get the concept. The students that got the concept and the students that were advanced in there, I gave them enrichment to push them along. So it wasn't just practicing the same problems over and over again. I forced them now to, okay, you got this, now let's take it and let's add this dimension to it. Let's make this a little more challenging here. Let's give you a little assignment or a little miniature project to work on, which was still on subject, but I was able to push them forward, and I was always available to them, and they came to me and asked me questions, and I still was able to bring them into my rotations in my centers that I had, but it allowed me to keep them going forward without necessarily having to reteach or teach the same thing over again, which they already got it. So,
Right.
so the argument is, if they already got it, because a lot of times I was teaching to the kids that didn't get it. So now, if you got it, then let's keep you moving forward.
Right.
Now, the kids who are struggling, I knew because I would embed questions in my videos, and a basic question. Okay, here's a concept. Okay, here's a question on it. Oh, you don't get it? Okay, I need, Sally, Mike, John, Frank, to come over here and work with me, and now I'm able to spend some targeted time with them versus trying to generally figure out where everybody's at as well. That's how I did it. I thought it was great. I got some great results from it, but every teacher has to kind of figure out for themselves how. My district encouraged us. We had a training on it, so I said, you know what, I'm going to do it, and it was different. So yeah.
Well, let's just take a quick break to say if you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. Our phone number is 214-431-5062, and we are speaking with Andrea Fields, who's an associate superintendent in Duncanville ISD. So I want to know from you, do you think that the bar for educators has been set high enough? And, in some ways, do we need to improve the qualifications for educating our future teachers and improve district hiring practices?
Wow, that's a lot
I know.
to think about.
That's
a lot to think about. In my past career, I worked with the HR department, the Human Resources Department, really recruiting, and not only recruiting but retaining staff. And particularly teachers, because those were really the lion's share of the hires that we did every year. Teacher training and teacher education and teacher quality programs have changed over the last, I'll say, decade plus. And one of that is because the great shortage of classroom teachers. First of all, I think it goes back to my first response about education in general. The perception of what schools are and what they're about has been really diminished just from perceptions and public comment about what's going on in schools. Teaching is very difficult. It is one of the most difficult professions because you're taking what you know and trying to teach someone else something, and it takes time, a lot of long, hard hours, and there's not a lot of pay that goes along with that. Well, with that being said, because of the shortage, the state of Texas really looked at options of what we could do to really increase the number of teachers. And this is not a problem that's local. It's not localized. It's not just a state problem. This is a national problem,
Right.
and perhaps an international problem. But with that, one of the things that the state of Texas did allow colleges and universities and school districts to do is to allow alternative certification folks to be hired as classroom teachers. And what that meant, and of course it's changing even since I've been away from HR, but what it meant for us is if you had a bachelor's degree in any area, they would take a look at your transcript to see how many hours you had in a particular subject. Like if we were looking at yours, Davis, I'm sure you have a lot of math. So at that point, you would have to have, if I'm recalling correctly, 18 to 24 hours in a course subject where you could become a math teacher. Now, it might have not been the career path for you initially with that, and then enroll in a program, typically those alternative certification programs, and there were many. They were set up through universities, they were set up through region service centers. Some school districts had their own alternative certification programs. Usually took you 12 to 18 months to complete the program. And while you were completing the program, you were allowed to become a probationary teacher. So basically you were doing on-the-job training, learning the pedagogy, learning all of the how to teach, getting your toolkit. And so that to me has been very challenging because many times people who take those jobs and become alternative certification teachers don't have the I guess the basics. If you went a traditional program where you've had an opportunity to go and observe, you have to have so many observation hours in a traditional program. Then you can go and say, I like the little ones, don't like the little ones. Sometimes when you have those core subjects, many times those folks become secondary teachers. And so that in and of itself, you're talking about high school age students, what kind of issues that you deal with pre-young adults. And so it helped us because we were able to recruit more teachers and get them in the classroom. But what it meant for school districts that we really had to have a very strong teacher support program. And that in and of itself really helps you. If you don't have that, and what I mean is something that's very strategic, intentional, and formal, where you support people who are new and novice teachers. Teaching is hard work. There are a lot of expectations for teachers. The content area, many times, I bet you if we ask him about math, he could do that. But all the other things that come with that, to engage the students, to keep the classroom moving, to handle the discipline, to handle special needs students who were in your classroom, how to differentiate instruction. You know math, but how do you teach it to those students who didn't meet the standards, who met the standards, who mastered the standards? You had all of those students in
and
your
who
classroom.
learned differently too.
And everyone learns different, whether it's your hands-on learners, whether it's your students who are visual, auditory, kinesthetic. You have all of those things going on at the same time, and you're moving. If you're a high school teacher, 125 students along. If you're an elementary teacher, perhaps maybe 22, just depending on where you were. So that has helped us, but it also is very challenging because I think if you would ask the people who decide to leave the profession, and many teachers decide to leave the profession between 0 years and 5. That's where the biggest turnover is. You make it past 5, you can probably make it. And so having those new and novice teacher support programs is a safety net, because you can't learn everything. Even when you go through a 4-year, 5-year traditional program, you don't really know what it's like until you're the teacher. You know, you do your student teaching in a traditional program. When you're an alternative certification teacher, your on-the-job training is your student teaching all at the same time. And so having the professor support, great, but they're not there every day. So that's why many times school districts will have mentors, and so many districts would like to be able to pay those mentors because that's work. It's really coaching and helping that new teacher along. It's not just the buddy teacher. I'm not talking about a buddy teacher. I'm talking about a true coach who coaches you, and that takes training. And so the districts who have those kinds of things in place, where the mentors are coached and trained, then they coach the teachers, and they're compensated for doing that, because you want to do the check-in. You don't want to just have that buddy teacher say, hey, this is where you make your copies, this is where you get your paycheck. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really those folks, because that first couple of years, it's really, really critical. So teacher quality programs have changed. I think it was answering that question in that I think we're learning more. Now the programs are bringing a little bit more in with social emotional learning. You're going to hear a lot more about that, a lot more with our current teachers of how we can address some of those issues. The standards, many times it's a dream deferred. They become a teacher. They really want to become a doctor. Or they really wanted to become maybe aerospace engineer. And I'll just use those two as examples. Yet, for whatever the circumstances, life circumstances happen, what do people teach? Say, you can always teach. And they don't really know. It's harder than being an aerospace engineer. Right. Because you really have young children's lives in your hands and their futures. And so it's very, very difficult. I'm not minimizing aerospace engineers. If you're out there and listening, I know that I could not do that. But I can tell you that I've heard many people who prepared to go into other fields and thought, I didn't know it was this difficult. I didn't know it was this hard, because, as David, you alluded to it at the beginning, all the expectations that we have in schools, all the things that we expect our teachers to do. So I think as we're moving along, we're getting better. We're getting smarter. Used to be, you knew your content, you could be a teacher, and that was it. But there's so many other expectations that we have, because we have such diverse learning populations in our schools now.
Let me ask a parallel question.
Sure.
That is, I don't know what data there's out there, but is teaching becoming less of a destination and calling versus, well, I guess I'll just become, like you just said, I'll just become a teacher. And then also, do certain districts hire less alternative certification teachers than others? Do you, like, if it's a particular demographic, as if it's a particular socioeconomic district, can they be, is there like requirements for us how many, traditional track teachers they hire versus others? I've heard some say, oh, well, they don't really hire alternative certification teachers in this particular district. They typically only hire ones that have, this particular type of credentials. So it's kind of a twofold question. Is it a destination? Is it still a destination? Or also just how districts select? Because that's going to impact our children as far as who's in front of them teaching.
That would be correct. I think overall, if you would poll, if you go down the halls of a school, you'll hear the majority of the folks tell you, I've always wanted to be a teacher. The people who are really good at it, a lot of times they've been teaching their brothers and sisters, their dolls, like I did, their dog, or anybody who'd listen, since they were young children, because they've always wanted to teach. They love it. But there are some outstanding alternative certification folks who said, if I'd known it was going to be this much fun, I would have done it sooner, because it's the money a lot of times that sometimes say, oh, you don't make a lot of money, you work hard, etc. And it is. So I think there's still a combination of I think we've always had that. We didn't always have alternative certification teachers. Either you were certified in a traditional program, and that was it.
Right.
There are districts, and right now I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know that when I was doing a lot of recruiting, if people were in alternative certification programs, they might as well have kept walking past their recruiting table, because they really did not engage, because they were able to either compensate well enough, or depending on the district where it was, where they really wanted to have that that standard set. And that's an individual district thing. But I think for us, we're really even getting into a whole lot of other things to be able to teach our students, because we have a lot of virtual classrooms now,
Right.
where there's a facilitator, but that teacher perhaps is not necessarily sitting there in the classroom, because our kids are so used to a lot of things in the virtual world. And so for a short where there's teacher shortages, many districts have to become very creative. Is that the
Wow.
best of all worlds? I'm a proponent, because I'm kind of old school too, of having that teacher there. But we've seen there are many districts who have some virtual classrooms. Of course, there's a lot of online learning. I mean, nowadays, if you get a master's degree almost from anywhere, you're basically doing it online, and you might not ever go to a classroom, right?
Right.
So even in public schools, we're learning a little bit more. The quality of the individuals who really want to do this work, I'd have to say, is they still really believe in what they're doing, because you don't get up 187 days and get in front of a group of students to stand there and fail. You really want to make a
Right.
difference. It's like with anyone. There's a spectrum. There are people who get it. They're gifted. They're just natural teachers. Then there are folks who need a little extra help. And of course, just like with any profession, there's some folks that don't fit, and soon, a lot of times, they'll find out very quickly that it's not going to work.
Right.
I know that students who have parents that are involved fare better than students a lot of times that don't. So what responsibilities for the success of our students fall on the parents versus the teachers in a child's education?
That's a great question, Danita, and had many discussions about partnerships, because I think you all opened up with it takes a village,
Yeah.
and it really does. We found, and research will probably bear this out, that students that are successful in school typically have some parent, some adult, some mentor, a little lead coach. They have some significant adult relationship that's supporting them in their education. We're focused on parents right now, and parents are a lot more apt to be involved when students are young. We designed it like that. I think we have all those programs, and parents come out and support their children in all the little programs they put on for Christmas and all of that. But having an active parent, and I have to say this, that does not mean you have to be a member of the PTA.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be the mom who volunteers for everything. But we need you at the table when we're making decisions for what's best for your child. It is critical. Many times, the parents we need to talk to the most, we don't get to talk to them. And I say this, sometimes that's shame on us. And when I say that, I mean is we have to offer other types of opportunities for parents to be involved. Not necessarily because parents work,
Right.
or they may be in a family situation where they don't have the transportation. Many times they may be sick, they may be caring for a younger sibling. There are a lot of other factors. They can't be at the school. So what we have to do as school, because we want you involved, is to have other ways. May not be during the day, maybe in the evening, maybe in the morning. Maybe we come to you. Maybe we do a one-on-one, because that's how important that it is. Make a home visit. You hardly hear about that too
Right.
much anymore, but that is significant. Start a school, going out to where our students live, making sure parents know, hey, your kid's going to be going to my school. And so getting them involved, telephone calls. Now we can FaceTime. We can do a lot more than and like I said, shame on us for really looking at other ways to engage parents. And not just in sporting events and all of those great things. I'm a avid sports person, but we need you at the table when we're talking about where this child's life is going to lead in regard to their education, and being open. And we have to have the platform for parents to do that. Now, social media is really helping us really engage, particularly our millennial parents. Because they like that, they're engaged. They can voice their opinions, share. But when it really gets down to the one-on-one, we need parents because it really makes a difference. Now, for some students, and you probably could name some from that went to school with you, their parents were never involved. The child made it anyway because they had another significant adult, whether it was a teacher, a coach, whoever, the janitor, who said, hey, I'm watching you. How are your grades? Being there, having the expectation that they were going to do well. And so that's why so many times we ask, we have the all-pro dads in our school district, or you may have the dad's club or the mom's club or whatever they wanted, whatever the name is, where there are adults who are there, who mentor kids, who coach kids, who are there to listen to them. So it is really a partnership. We need everybody, whether the parent or the surrogate parent, the grandma, whoever is the one who's raising the child.
And we actually are going to do a whole show about parent partnership because, it's difficult. David and I are in education, and sometimes we have found it ourselves hard to navigate the school system. And, we as parents are busy and we're tired, and we want to know, but we want our kids to succeed. And we know that our involvement is a big part of that. So I would love to have you back on to talk about ways that parents can get involved that don't include necessarily being the president of the PTA. Because I'm not going to do that necessarily myself.
Necessarily.
Right, yeah.
Ever.
But just keeping it, for just the basics, just keeping the line of communication. Again, I always say it works both ways. You communicating with us, and then we're communicating with you more than just when there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That has to be. It has to. The dialogue has to start. It can start the first day of school or before, saying, "Hey, I've got Andrea in my class, and I'm glad she's going to be there." So at least you've introduced yourself. You've opened the doors. We need that. It's nothing more than just a communication. You may not be able to come, but can I call you? Can I send you a text? Some way that we can communicate so we can support the child.
Yeah, we're going to have you back on before the summer is over so we can talk all about that. But unfortunately, right now, we are out of time for this show.
Again?
But thank you. Yes, I know. There's so many things we did not even touch on that I wanted to talk about. So we might have to do a part 2 for that as well.
Or 3.
Right. But thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about one of my greatest passions, and that is public education.
Well, at this time, we always want to tell you what's going on with Noggin Educational Coaching and Noggin Educational Foundation. So what's happening with Noggin Coaching, Dave?
Well, as we wrap up the end of the school year, this is one of the times when it's very easy to say, I'm done, put everything away and move on. But really, this is one of the best times to help your children to reflect on the prior school year, what worked, what didn't work, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. Then also just to get ready for what's coming around the corner. If there's a more challenging course happening in the school year, or if there's some gaps that they need to get filled in to be prepared, Noggin would love to help you to work with you and with your child to kind of assess where they are. So please reach out to info@noggin, Noggin, education.com, and we can talk through what those challenges are. We have a lot of families who come to us during the summer because they really want to help their children be prepared. So don't think that just because the school year is over that learning is done as well.
And with Noggin Educational Foundation, we are actually looking for a summer intern for school days for our show. So if you are interested in being one of our summer interns and you are between the ages of 15 and I think 20, go to schooldaysedshow.com and click on the link that says summer internship, and we would love to hear from you. So Dave, what's happening next week? You just kind of introed.
I did.
You really?
Yeah, I wasn't even, that wasn't
really,
even
you didn't mean
intentional.
to, but you kind of introed the show for next week.
Okay, so some students are already out of school, like our children, and for others, this is your last week. For some, even go deep into June, 1 or 2 weeks. So the summer is a crucial time for students and a great time to strengthen skills. So next week, we'll talk about avoiding summer learning loss with the CEO of National Summer Learning Association and the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Julie Miller. So we're looking forward to talking about that and how to keep things moving along during the summer months.
Absolutely.
It really is critical.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And as always, we want to let you know to head to our website, schooldayshow.com, for more information. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and really anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcasts. And also, we want you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noggin Noggin Foundation. And we always end our show each week by saying that David and I are parenting by grace. We depend on God to give us the wisdom and strength we need to raise our kids into flourishing adults. And if you'd like to know more about that, feel free to email us at info@schooldayshow.com. Have a great week.
School Days is sponsored by Noggin Educational Foundation. At Noggin, we provide free educational resources to students from low-income families and support to their parents like the preceding broadcast. School Days is made possible by the generosity of listeners just like you. Please consider donating to Noggin at Noggin, Noggin, Foundation.org.